He was known in the city as a man who had achieved everything most people only dreamed about. His name appeared in business magazines, his face showed up at charity events, and his success story was often used as an example of hard work and discipline. He owned luxury cars, a beautiful house, and several companies that earned more money in a day than most people earned in a year. From the outside, his life looked perfect. But inside, something was missing, something he could never buy. The millionaire woke up every morning before sunrise. His routine never changed. Exercise, emails, meetings, decisions, and more meetings. His phone never stopped ringing. People respected him, but very few truly knew him. He kept his emotions locked away, believing feelings were a weakness that could distract him from success. He had built his empire alone, trusting numbers more than people and contracts more than promises. Years earlier, after reaching the peak of his career, he felt an unexpected emptiness. The silence of his large house became unbearable at night. There was no laughter, no warmth, only expensive furniture and quiet hallways. That was when he made a decision that surprised everyone around him. He adopted a young girl from an orphanage. Many thought it was a publicity move, but deep inside, he hoped she might fill the empty space in his heart. The little girl was shy at first. She did not speak much and always looked around as if afraid someone might take her away again. He was awkward around her. He did not know how to talk to children, did not know how to show affection. Still, he made sure she had the best of everything. The best school, the best clothes, the best room in the house. He believed that providing comfort and security was enough to make her happy. Slowly, the girl began to open up. She smiled more. She followed him around the house. Sometimes she waited near the door just to see him come home. She would tell him small stories about her day, stories he often listened to while checking emails or taking calls. He did not realize that those moments meant everything to her. To him, they felt ordinary. To her, they felt like hope. Even though he cared for her, peace still did not come. His mind was always busy, always racing. At night, he sat alone in his study, staring at screens and numbers, feeling tired but unable to rest. The girl slept peacefully in her room, believing she was finally safe. He did not understand that safety alone was not enough. Love needed time, attention, and presence. One evening, a serious business problem appeared. A major deal was falling apart, and his entire company was at risk. It required his full attention and his physical presence in another country. The trip would take 3 months, maybe more. When he heard the news, his first thought was business. The second thought, much quieter, was about the little girl. When he told her he had to leave, she tried to be brave. She nodded and said she understood. But her hands tightened around her small toy, and her eyes searched his face. She asked if he would come back soon. He smiled and said yes, without thinking too much about what soon meant to a child who had already been left behind once. On the day he left, the goodbye was short. He hugged her quickly, told her to listen to her caregiver, and promised to bring her a gift. He believed that promises and gifts could replace presents. As he walked out, he did not notice how long she stood at the door, watching his car disappear. During the flight, surrounded by comfort and luxury, he felt restless. He told himself it was stress. He pushed the feeling away and focused on work. He did not know that this moment, this simple goodbye, was the beginning of a lesson that would change his life. At that time, he still believed he had everything under control. Money, power, and success had always obeyed him. What he did not yet understand was that peace does not come from achievement. It comes from connection. And the one connection that could have given him peace was waiting quietly back home, believing he would return. When the morning came after he left, the house felt different. The caregivers noticed it first. The little girl woke up earlier than usual and sat quietly on her bed, holding the same small toy she had clutched the day before. She did not cry. She did not ask questions. She simply waited. In her young mind, waiting had become a habit long before she was adopted. She went to school that day wearing a neat uniform, but something inside her had shifted. When other children talked about their parents picking them up or helping with homework, she stayed silent. She used to talk proudly about her father, the man who came home late but smiled when he saw her. Now she avoided saying his name, as if speaking it might make the pain sharper. At home, she followed her routine carefully. She ate when told, finished her homework, and sat in her room drawing pictures. Most of the drawings were the same. A tall man, a small girl, and a house. In the corner of the page, she always drew a road stretching far away. She never explained why. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, the millionaire threw himself into work. His days were filled with meetings, negotiations, and long hours under bright office lights. He solved problems quickly, made bold decisions, and impressed everyone around him. Yet at night, when the room went quiet, an uncomfortable feeling returned. He checked his phone more often than usual, scrolling through photos he barely remembered taking. He told himself that the girl was safe. She had everything she needed. Caregivers, teachers, comfort, and security. That thought helped him sleep, but only for a few hours. In his dreams, he saw her standing at the door, waiting. He woke up confused, annoyed with himself for letting emotions distract him. Back at home, the girls stopped asking when he would return. At first, the caregivers tried to comfort her, telling her stories about how busy adults sometimes had to go away. She listened politely, but her eyes no longer showed curiosity. Instead, they showed understanding far beyond her age. She had learned a hard lesson early in life. People leave, even when they promise not to. At school, her teacher noticed changes. The girl was still well behaved, but she no longer raised her hand. She no longer smiled easily. When asked to write about family, she wrote only a few lines and asked to sit quietly. The teacher reported her concern, but no one imagined how deeply the silence was growing. Weeks passed. The house remained quiet. No footsteps at night, no brief conversations before bedtime. The girl learned to fall asleep on her own, hugging her pillow tightly. She whispered goodnight into the darkness, not sure who she was speaking to. Sometimes she imagined he could hear her, wherever he was. The millionaire tried calling home a few times. Each call was short. He asked if she was fine, if she was eating well, if she was behaving. The caregivers said yes. The girl stood nearby during those calls, listening quietly. When the phone was handed to her, she answered politely, saying she was okay. She did not complain. She did not say she missed him. She believed that saying too much might make him go away longer. After hanging up, he felt uneasy. Something in her voice sounded different. It was calm, too calm. He told himself children adapt quickly. He returned to work, ignoring the weight in his chest. One evening, the girl did something unusual. She packed a small bag and hid it under her bed. Inside were a few clothes, her drawings, and her toy. When the caregiver found it and asked why, the girl replied softly that she wanted to be ready, just in case. She did not explain further. That night, as the city lights shone outside his hotel window, the millionaire sat alone, staring at his reflection in the glass. For the first time in years, success did not comfort him. Somewhere deep inside, a question formed, one he was not ready to face. What if coming back would not be enough? Neither of them knew it yet, but the quiet distance growing between them was more dangerous than any business failure. And every silent day was shaping the moment that would break him when he finally returned. The third month began with rain. It rained outside the large house, and it rained quietly inside the hearts of both the father and the child, even though they were far apart. Time moved forward, but for the little girl, every day felt heavy and slow, as if the clock had decided to punish her for believing too much. She stopped waiting near the door in the evenings. Earlier, She used to sit there, pretending to play while secretly listening for the sound of a car. Now she stayed in her room. She learned how to keep herself busy. She read books alone, cleaned her small space, and spoke only when spoken to. The caregivers noticed she had become very mature, too mature for her age. At school, her teacher asked her one day to draw her family. The girl picked up her crayons and stared at the paper for a long time. Other children started drawing quickly, laughing and sharing colors. She finally drew herself first. Then she drew the house. The place where a father should be was left empty. When the teacher gently asked about it, the girl smiled and said her father was very busy. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled slightly. That same week, she stopped calling him Dad when talking to others. She used his name instead. It was a small change, but it carried a deep meaning. Calling someone Dad felt like a promise, and promises, she had learned, could disappear. Far away, the millionaire was winning battles every day. Deals were closing. People praised him. His name appeared in the news again. Yet none of it felt good anymore. He ate expensive meals but felt no taste. He slept in luxury hotels but woke up tired. His mind kept going back to small moments he had ignored before. Her laughter. Her drawings. The way she looked at him as if he were the safest place in the world. One night, he found a photo on his phone. It was taken months ago. The girl was standing beside him, holding his hand tightly, smiling with complete trust. He stared at it for a long time. For the first time, fear entered his heart. Not fear of loss in business, but fear of losing something he did not know how to replace. He decided to call home again. This time, he asked to speak to her alone. When her voice came on the line, it sounded polite and distant. She answered his questions carefully. Yes, she was fine. Yes, school was good. Yes, she was happy. Each answer felt rehearsed. He asked her if she missed him. There was a pause. A long one. Then she said, "I know you are busy." That was all. The call ended soon after. He sat there, phone in his hand, feeling something break quietly inside him. Back home, the girl placed another drawing into her small bag under the bed. This one showed a girl standing alone under a big sky. No house. No road. Just space. She did not cry while drawing it. She felt empty instead, and emptiness felt safer than hope. One evening, she overheard two caregivers talking. They mentioned that some adopted children are returned when things do not work out. They did not know she was listening. The words burned into her heart. That night, she did not sleep. She hugged her bag and stayed awake until morning. Meanwhile, the millionaire began counting days. Not for the deal, but for the return. The closer it came, the more nervous he felt. He imagined her running toward him, then imagined her not moving at all. Both thoughts scared him. When the final week arrived, he packed his suitcase slowly. Each item reminded him of how long he had been away. He realized something painful. During these 3 months, he had grown as a businessman, but she had grown up emotionally in ways no child should have to. Neither of them knew exactly what would happen when he returned. But one thing was certain. These 3 months had changed everything, and the reunion would not be simple. By the time the 4th month quietly approached, the little girl had stopped counting days completely. Numbers no longer mattered to her. Hope had become something she kept hidden, like a fragile secret that could break if touched too often. The house still looked the same, but for her, it no longer felt like home. It felt like a place she was staying in, not a place she belonged to. She learned how to do things on her own. She woke up without being called, prepared her school bag carefully, and never asked for help unless it was absolutely necessary. When other children talked about missing their parents, she listened silently, her face calm, her heart closed. She did not want to feel jealous. She did not want to feel anything at all. At school, her teacher noticed that she no longer brought drawings of her family. Now she drew trees, empty playgrounds, and birds flying far away. When asked what they meant, she said they were just pictures. But inside, they were stories of distance and freedom, stories without waiting. At home, the caregivers tried to give her extra attention. They praised her for being good, for being quiet, for being independent. Each compliment made her feel smaller. She did not want to be good because she was afraid. She wanted to be loved because she mattered, but she did not know how to ask for that. One afternoon, she found a small box in her room. Inside were items from her first days in the house. A pair of shoes, a ribbon, and a photo of her standing beside him. She stared at the photo for a long time. She remembered how safe she had felt that day. Slowly, she placed the photo back and closed the box. It hurt too much to keep it close. That evening, she sat with one of the caregivers and asked a question she had been holding inside for weeks. She asked what happens if someone changes their mind. The caregiver tried to reassure her, saying families do not leave so easily. The girl nodded, but she did not look convinced. She had learned that promises sometimes sound strong but break quietly. Far away, the millionaire was struggling in ways he had never experienced. His success no longer excited him. Meetings felt long and empty. Applause felt distant. At night, he replayed memories of the girl's early days in his home. He realized he had missed signs. The way she waited. The way she smiled even when he was distracted. The way she needed more than gifts. He received an email from her school. It mentioned changes in her behavior. Polite words, careful language, concern hidden between lines. He read it twice. Then a third time. A deep heaviness settled in his chest. For the first time, he admitted to himself that he might have hurt her without meaning to. He tried to comfort himself with logic. 3 months was not a lifetime. Children forget easily. But something inside him argued back. Children remember how you make them feel. Back home, the girl made a decision without telling anyone. She stopped expecting anything. No calls. No returns. No surprises. She decided that if he came back, it would be a bonus, not a promise. This decision gave her a strange sense of control. It also took something precious away. One night, there was a power outage. The house went dark. The caregivers moved quickly, lighting candles and checking rooms. When they reached the girl, they found her sitting quietly on her bed, holding her bag. She was not scared of the dark. She was scared of being unprepared. She whispered to herself that she would be okay no matter what happened. Saying it out loud made it feel real. As the days moved closer to his return, the gap between them widened silently. One was preparing to come back and fix everything. The other was preparing for the possibility that nothing would change. Both believed they were protecting themselves. Neither realized how close they were to a moment that would change them forever, when all the walls they had built would finally fall. The day he returned did not feel special at first. The sky was clear, the roads were busy, and the city moved like it always did. For everyone else, it was just another normal day. But for him, it felt heavier than any day before. As his car moved closer to the house, his heart beat faster, not with excitement, but with fear he could not explain. He imagined the moment many times during the flight. He thought the girl would run toward him, smiling, calling his name. He imagined lifting her in his arms and feeling relief wash over him. These thoughts comforted him on the plane, but as the car slowed near the gate, doubt began to replace hope. The gate opened slowly. The house stood quiet and still. No movement near the door. No small figure waiting. He stepped out of the car and looked around, expecting her to appear any second. She did not. Inside, the caregivers welcomed him warmly. They told him she was inside, in her room. He nodded, forcing a smile. Something felt wrong. The house felt colder than before, even though everything looked the same. He walked down the hallway, each step slower than the last. He stopped outside her room and listened. No sound. He knocked softly. When he opened the door, he saw her sitting on the floor, arranging her books carefully. She looked up. For a brief moment, surprise crossed her face. Then it disappeared. She stood up politely and greeted him. Her voice was calm. Too calm. She did not run. She did not hug him. She did not cry. She simply stood there, waiting for instructions, like a guest. That moment confused him more than anger ever could. He smiled awkwardly and asked how she was. She said she was fine. He asked about school. She said it was okay. Every answer was short and careful. He felt like he was speaking to someone he had just met, not the child who once waited by the door every evening. They sat together for dinner. The table felt large and empty. She ate quietly, thanking him for the food even though he had not cooked it. He tried to joke, tried to tell her about his trip, but his words felt heavy in the air. She listened politely, nodding, but her eyes stayed distant. Later that evening, he noticed something strange. Her room was too neat. Not like a child's room. Everything was placed carefully, as if she did not want to take up too much space. He also noticed a small bag under her bed. When he asked about it, she said it was nothing. Her tone was gentle, but firm. That night, he could not sleep. He walked through the house, memories following him like shadows. He remembered her laughter, her questions, her excitement when he came home late from work. All of it felt far away now. He wondered when exactly things had changed. The next morning, he tried again. He asked her if she wanted to go out, maybe to the park or for ice cream. She agreed, but without excitement. At the park, she sat beside him on the bench instead of running to play. She watched other children laughing with their parents. Her hands rested quietly in her lap. He realized then that she was protecting herself. Not from danger, but from disappointment. She had learned how to be strong without him. And that realization hurt more than anything he had ever faced in business. That evening, he overheard her talking softly in her room. He stopped outside the door. She was speaking to herself, practicing words, reminding herself not to expect too much. His chest tightened. Tears filled his eyes, but he did not enter. For the first time in his life, he understood that coming back was not enough. Presence was not about returning. It was about staying. And standing there in the quiet hallway, he knew the hardest part was still ahead, because winning back her trust would take more than money, more than promises. It would take time, patience, and a kind of courage he had never needed before. He had never felt fear like this before. Not in business, not during negotiations, not when billion-dollar deals were on the line. But now, standing quietly outside her room one night, he felt a cold weight in his chest. He had returned home expecting a joyful reunion, imagining laughter and hugs. What he found instead was distance, calmness, and a silence that felt like a wall between them. Earlier that evening, he had walked into her room to find her drawing quietly at her desk. He smiled, thinking this was a chance to connect, but when he asked about her day, she only shrugged. Her words were polite, but her eyes were empty. For the first time, he realized that the 3 months away had changed her. She had grown up in his absence, and she had learned that relying on him might not be safe. Then it happened. A small moment, almost invisible, but it pierced his heart like a sharp knife. She had drawn a picture, a small girl standing under a big sky, alone. No house, no father, no safe corner. Only herself, surrounded by emptiness. When he asked about it, she said calmly, "It's just a picture." But he knew it was not. She had drawn exactly what she felt. She had drawn her truth, a truth he had ignored for months. Tears welled up in his eyes, unbidden. He had believed that love could be shown through gifts, through financial security, through brief visits. He had thought his absence would not matter. But now, he understood that money could not replace presence. Promises could not replace time. And his little girl, the one he had adopted with hope in his heart, had learned to protect herself from disappointment. He sank into a chair beside her desk, unable to speak at first. The silence between them was heavy. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry." His voice trembled. He repeated it, each time louder, each time more desperate. "I'm sorry for leaving. I'm sorry for not being here. I promise I will stay." For the first time in weeks, she looked up at him, not with fear, not with anger, but with cautious curiosity. Her eyes searched his, trying to see if he meant it. He reached out slowly, letting her choose whether to accept him. She did not move at first, and his chest tightened. But then, ever so slowly, she stepped closer, resting her hand on his. It was a small gesture, almost invisible, but to him, it was everything. That night, he stayed by her side longer than he ever had. He listened to her stories, really listened, without interruptions, without checking his phone, without planning what to do next. He let her lead the conversation, let her share her thoughts and fears. He realized that these small moments were worth more than all the wealth he had ever earned. Later, he reflected on what he had learned. He understood that being a father was not about controlling, not about providing, not even about loving in big gestures. It was about showing up consistently, about letting her know she was seen, heard, and safe. And he knew that rebuilding the bond would take time. It would not be instant. Trust, once shaken, had to be earned again. But he also knew something else. Seeing her small hand in his, feeling the weight of her quiet trust, he understood that there was still hope. That hope was fragile, yes, but it existed. And for the first time since he had returned, he felt true purpose. Not in deals, not in money, not in accolades, but in being a father, a protector, a presence she could count on. That night, as he tucked her into bed and watched her finally drift into sleep, tears rolled silently down his cheeks. They were not tears of shame or guilt, they were tears of awakening. He had returned to a child he loved deeply, only to realize that love alone was not enough. To keep her, he would have to be patient, present, and unafraid of showing his heart. And for the first time, he knew he was ready. From the moment he realized the depth of her loneliness, the millionaire knew that business strategies and wealth would no longer solve the problem in front of him. He had to learn a new kind of patience, a new kind of persistence, and a new kind of love. The next morning, he started small, very small, sitting beside her at breakfast without speaking too much, letting her see he was there, really there. The little girl watched him quietly, unsure at first whether his presence was permanent or temporary, but she did not move away, and that was a beginning. Over the next few days, he began leaving work aside earlier than usual, canceling unnecessary meetings, and dedicating time just to be at home, not to control or instruct, but simply to exist alongside her. At first, she noticed, but she did not respond immediately. She had learned too well to expect disappointment. Her eyes would follow him around the house, sometimes curious, sometimes distant, but the barrier was slowly beginning to soften. He discovered small joys in their routines, like making breakfast together, helping her with homework, or simply listening to her talk about school. Each laugh, each shared glance, became a tiny victory in rebuilding the trust that had been shaken. He realized that showing up consistently, not grand gestures, was the key to healing. One evening, she spoke to him about her fears, softly, as if testing whether he could hold them without disappearing. She told him about the bag she had packed under the bed months ago, about the nights she stayed awake wondering if he would return, and about the quiet voice inside her that had learned not to hope too much. His heart ached, but he listened without interruption, offering comfort not through words alone, but through presence and understanding. He began leaving little notes around the house for her to find, simple messages like, "I am here," or "I will stay." She found them one by one, at first reading them quickly and moving on, but over time, they became treasures she would keep close, small reminders that he had chosen to be present, that his love was real and consistent. Slowly, the barriers she had built began to crumble. One afternoon, while playing a game together, she laughed freely for the first time in months, and he felt a relief so deep it made him dizzy. He realized that true connection was fragile and had to be nurtured carefully, that laughter was not just joy, it was a signal that he was finally being seen and accepted. He also learned to apologize again and again, not only for leaving but for all the small moments of neglect he had never noticed. Each apology was a thread, slowly weaving the bond stronger. She began to respond, sometimes with words, sometimes with gestures, sometimes with silence, but always with a little more trust than before. By the end of the week, he noticed changes beyond the small interactions. She asked for his advice on small things, shared stories spontaneously, and even offered him her drawings, placing them proudly on his desk. These were signs that the walls she had built were no longer as tall, and that love, patience, and consistency could bridge even the deepest gap. He finally understood that being a father was not about perfection or timing, it was about presence, patience, and allowing love to be rebuilt slowly, day by day. That realization transformed him, reshaping his priorities and showing him that wealth could never compare to the treasure of trust and affection from someone who depended on him. And in the quiet moments before sleep, when she would snuggle close or whisper a small, "I love you," he knew that the hardest part had been faced, and that true healing had begun, not by force, not by gifts, but by showing up every day, with courage and heart. And for the first time, he felt a peace that no money, no deal, no success had ever given him, a peace born from the simple, profound act of being there, unconditionally, for the little girl he loved. The days that followed felt different. Almost like a new season had arrived in the house. The little girl's laughter began to echo through the halls again, soft at first, hesitant, but gradually growing bolder. Her trust was no longer a fragile thread, it was slowly becoming a strong rope that tied them together. The millionaire had learned that being a father meant showing up not just when it was convenient, but every day, even when tired, even when work called, even when the world outside demanded his attention. He spent mornings helping her get ready for school, afternoons reading stories or solving puzzles, and evenings simply sitting together in quiet conversation, allowing connection to grow naturally. One afternoon, while they were drawing together, she asked him a question that stopped him in his tracks. "Will you always stay with me, even when I'm not good or when you are busy?" Her voice trembled slightly, revealing the shadow of fear she had carried for months. He looked into her eyes and held her hands, replying, "I will always stay. Not just for the good days, not just when it's easy, but always, no matter what." That moment was not a promise on paper or a gift bought with money, it was a commitment from his heart, one she could finally believe. From that day on, their routines changed, but in the best way. They laughed while cooking meals together, danced in the living room to silly songs, and told each other secrets late at night. She began sharing her thoughts freely, her imagination blossoming, and her small gestures of love grew bolder. She would leave notes for him, draw pictures, or simply hold his hand tightly when she wanted comfort. The millionaire also changed in ways he had never imagined. He stopped measuring success in numbers or accolades. Instead, he measured it in moments like these, in the sparkle of her eyes, in her spontaneous giggles, and in the silent understanding they shared. His life, once filled with stress, meetings, and endless decisions, now felt full in a completely new way, full of meaning, full of warmth, and full of love. One evening, they sat on the balcony together, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. She leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "I missed you so much," and he felt a mixture of relief and sorrow, relief that she had returned to him emotionally, and sorrow for the months he had been away. He held her close, promising himself silently that he would never let her feel that kind of absence again. Over time, the little girl's fear of abandonment faded completely, replaced by confidence in the bond they now shared. She knew that he was not perfect, but she knew he would always try, and that knowledge gave her a sense of security that no wealth could provide. Their home, once quiet and empty, now overflowed with laughter, warmth, and the kind of love that only grows stronger after surviving challenges. The millionaire understood something that no deal, no title, and no achievement had ever taught him: real wealth was not in money, but in trust. Real success was not in power, but in presence. Real happiness was not in accomplishing goals alone, but in building someone else's world alongside them. He realized that his adopted daughter had not only needed him, she had changed him, softened him, and shown him what life truly meant. And as they sat together, sharing stories of their day and planning for tomorrow, he knew that family was not defined by blood or circumstance, but by love, commitment, and the choice to stay. She was no longer a child waiting in silence for him to return. She was a girl confident in the knowledge that her father was there, and he was no longer a man running from emotion or success. He was a father fully present, fully committed, and fully in love. That night, as he watched her sleep peacefully, he whispered a promise to himself and to her, one that would never break: I am here, and I will always be here. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the soft glow of the night, both hearts finally felt whole, not because of wealth or status, but because they had found each other again, truly and completely.